Hello and welcome to IBM Bi-Weekly, a podcast focused on the technical aspects of IBM I operating system and the community revolving around it. My name is Josh, and with me is co-host Liam. Today is the 25th of March, 2019, and we have episode 3, Open Source Software on IBM I in store for you. Today we're going to be talking with IBM's own Jesse Gorzinski, and before we do that, we'll be going over some news. And before we do that, we'll jump into the sponsorship spotlight for today.
We would like to thank our sponsor, the Omni User Group in Chicago at omniusergroup.org. Omni meets every third Thursday in the Chicago area. They have speakers and sessions and meetings and dinner. You can check the website, again, omniuser.org, for their upcoming speakers and their upcoming dinner meetings. So thank you to them for sponsoring this episode.
Now on to the news. I think we'll start off with WMCPA that just happened in Wisconsin. Fantastic conference. I met a lot of great people. The students there were wonderful. I think that was my favorite part of the conference, was how much they involve students from the area. Besides that, we have some news from Liam.
Well, some news, some not. I will be speaking remotely for the Metro Midrange Systems Association on the 19th of March, which, since we are recording on the 18th, that is tomorrow for me. And then the summit is the week of the release of this podcast is when the summit is, which is next week. And I'll be speaking at that too, which is exciting. And then I guess the one bit of technical news that we can maybe start talking about is that there is the generic ODBC driver, which is going to be coming out, which is for IBM I, basically. There's going to be drivers for Mac, Linux, and Windows that point to IBM I. There's also going to be a driver for IBM I that talks to IBM I in ODBC drivers. So you can use those in PHP and Node.js and Java and so on and so forth. They'll actually, and the thing is, they're actually coming from IBM as well, which is really great. And
it's very exciting.
I'm very, very excited very excited indeed.
Yeah. So there's one other little bit of news to talk about that was from WMCPA. Larry Bolhuis took over the time slot that Mike was going to be speaking, that I could not substitute, and had a bit of an open discussion about having an accessible version of IBM I to students, open source developers, and such as the like. Him and I had a bit of a conversation at the beginning of the conference, and some other students had already mentioned this also. The platform just simply isn't accessible. Just to put it in as simple terms as I can put it. Now, yes, anyone can get it, but not anyone can afford it. And a lot of the complaints that I hear from open source offerings out there, if you go to them and you say, why don't you support IBM I? Their answer almost always is, we would love to. We want to support everything. We just can't afford a box to test our software on, and we're not going to release something that we cannot continuously test. And that's a very valid point. They're open source software. They don't have the funds to afford an IBM I, and neither do students that want to explore it. And Larry's conversation that we had there was wonderful. I think we had already practically figured out hardware, hosting issues, a website, a front end, a way to spin up and stop cloud partitions, etc. The only roadblock we were running into was figuring out the licensing. So we still need help with that, but it's a very exciting topic that we're hoping to really get some momentum behind. I think it's exciting. A lot of the students there were happy to hear about it when they joined the topic. And I think it's something that could really help the platform, honestly.
How exciting.
Yeah, that's that topic. Just to round it out, I guess, it's just basically the idea is some sort of free or very affordable way to spin up an IBM I cloud instance that allows you to develop for educational or open source purposes.
Well,
Yeah.
with that being said, today we have a very special guest, the one and only Jesse Gorzinski from IBM. We had some questions for him, of course, mostly related to open source because that is his role. And I will, well, without further ado, here we go, man.
Welcome to the interview or discussion portion of the podcast. We have with us Jesse Gorzinski. And Jesse, would you like to just introduce yourself? Tell us who you are and what you do at IBM, please?
Absolutely. I'm a business architect at IBM. That probably means as much to you as it does to me, which is absolutely nothing. I don't know what a business architect is supposed to do, but my scope of responsibilities is open source technology on IBM I. And here in development, I pretty much own everything that's either open source or enables the open source stack. For instance, the PACE development or the whole PACE environment. And I pretty much do everything that I can do to make sure that stuff is successful. And so that includes, advocating for it at various events and blogs and things like this, as well as, I get to hack away at code and help things at that level as well. So I kind of do, technical, non-technical, whatever is needed to make open source successful. So hard to really wrap that up, but that's who I am, and I appreciate you guys having me here today.
It makes sense. Okay, I think a lot of people are aware, but you were actually in ACS previously. But correct me if I'm wrong. You're actually part of the ACS development team, but or the Java, something in that general area. But what got you into IBM I specifically? What was your background before you did anything IBM I related?
So I didn't have any background before IBM I. My first professional job was actually working at an iSeries shop when I was in college. So I got a job at this loan subservicer, loan servicing place, and was just blown away by the amount of business and revenue that they were on top of with very few employees, right? They had a lot of assets. They had billions of dollars in assets. They had, I think they employed, if I had to guess, probably 45 people, right? And I was just amazed. And I learned that they ran all of their technology on this, they called it the AS400, but this weird machine in the closet. And,
right.
I started as kind of an operator doing some of those tasks, and I quickly kind of fell in love with it because I saw the power that this thing had. I actually was kind of fond of the green screen interface at the time because I was doing a lot of Linux, Unix stuff, which is a lot of command line stuff. And green screen is kind of command line on steroids, right? It's like I can type a command and press F4, and I actually love that aspect of it.
Okay.
But then I grew into, doing a lot more stuff with them. So I was doing more software development and process automation. And one of the things I did was actually moving some of our reporting techniques from these Windows machines over to the iSeries. And, they ran in just a fraction of the time and took a fraction of the resources. We were able to cut down some Windows machines, and it was really fun. So I fell in love with the platform, and it was a good follow-on that I got hired here at IBM to work on the platform as well.
Wow.
Nice.
Okay. So you've just been in it from the beginning.
Yeah. I mean, the only job
right.
I had before iSeries was at a chair factory, and let's not talk about that too much.
Okay, well, with that, then I guess we'll jump into something a bit more technical. We thought we'd throw you a curveball and see if you even could describe this, but do you have any idea why PTFs came about and what was the original idea behind these patches or between releases and such?
Yep. So the original idea was, we started seeing the value of some of these open source technologies. And of course, it started with Node.js, the server-side JavaScript. We saw the value there very early. We saw the capability that it had, because as I've mentioned multiple times publicly, Node.js is some of the most fascinating technology I've ever worked on. And We saw that what Node.js provides and what IBMI customers needed, there was a lot of overlap, a lot of synergy there. But we brought Node.js on, and the reason for PTFs was really, to an extent, that's kind of the way it's always been done. And we wanted to deploy something and ship something and allow people to maintain things in these standard IBMI fashions, so that system administrators just needed to know, here's another licensed program offering, here's a set of group PTFs, that's all you need to know. And then we broke it up into options, and we delivered various technologies and all these different product options. And the thought really was to do things conventionally and to try to make this technology easy to digest and easy to get started with from that angle, right? And as you guys know,
successful?
What's that?
Do you think it was successful?
I think it was, to some extent, actually. Now we're in the process of killing OPS, for lack of better words. A lot of the options there are already, no longer receiving fixes and so on. But it was successful in the sense that there was this set of customers that adopted it because of the familiarity, right?
Right. I completely agree.
Because they were adopted to, various other technologies that we've carved out these license programs for, and they were able to use it. And it was just, again, it was this familiar thing. And that did drive some success. It did drive, in my opinion, awareness of what we're doing.
Yeah, I would go further than some success, because you can look at it now. 5733 OPS was adopted, I would say, fairly quickly, especially. Yeah. But now Yum, it's like we're having to continuously present about it, and people are still slow, like they're slowly adopting it. Where 5733 OPS, it was like maybe 1 year and almost everybody had it.
Yeah, and there were various partners and things as well that were just, hey, we're installing a stack of products for you. We're just adding this one to the list, right? And it was very easy in that regard, right? But it of course, it ran into some sustainability issues and things. But yeah, it was pretty successful, because suddenly, like you say, we had, a decent share of our customers having this stuff installed, a decent amount of those customers at least having somebody who's tinkering and playing with it, right? And that was pretty big. And it was I wouldn't say that doing an LPO was the worst or the best decision, right? It's somewhere in the middle.
Right.
Okay. So if you have that reliability with the PTF group 5733 OPS, if you have that reliability and everybody's using it, whose idea was it to move to Yum then? What was the breaking point of actually moving to it? Because that's obviously quite a change from someone that's so used to having just PTFs to install things.
Yeah, it was a huge change. Yeah.
It was a huge change.
If you're looking for a single person to, put a face on a dartboard, it'd be me. But, for various reasons, there was a number of us here inside of development who were seeing that the PTF model just wouldn't last long term. It was not a viable way to continue doing open source work in the ways that we wanted to do open source work. And so, it took a while for us to realize that, yes, this is worth trying to get customers to learn some new skills in order to make the transition. And then, of course, it took us a while just to get the technology and everything lined up and working, right? Getting Yum working was not an afternoon activity. Getting the RPM ecosystem working, of course, was substantial as well. So it took us a while, but, like I said, there were a lot of us in development, particularly anybody who is dealing with spinning those PTFs. We saw we needed something else, and of course, aligning with Red Hat seemed like the right thing to do with the whole Red Hat ecosystem. So that's what we did.
That makes a lot of sense.
All right. Well, that's really good to know. So, speaking of Yum and the packages it delivers, we thought we might speak on maybe a sensitive subject. Who knows? But we have Node.js available. We have Python available, Nginx, and other open source technologies. but we don't have PHP outside of a packaged solution yet. We're not able to yum install PHP and its extensions yet. Is there anything in the roadmap for maybe seeing that in the future?
So I'll give you a little bit of a vanilla answer here, but I want to make a few things clear. The first is, of course, PHP on IBM I has been accomplished by this partnership that we've had with Zend, now RopeWave, or actually now Perforce for those who've seen that news. And we have a very long, strong relationship with them doing PHP, right? And so, of course, that's how we got Zen Server back in the day. That's how we've gotten the Zen Server updates over the years, this package solution that you mentioned. And right now, I would say that collectively, both companies are kind of looking at what the right solution is moving forward. And I'd be unsurprised to see some changes moving forward. But again, we're really working with them very strongly to not only get the builds and the technology, but also make sure that we have the right quality in place before we make any changes. And again, we're just kind of reanalyzing, right? Because I think what happens when we brought Yum and RPMs onto the system, I think in a sense it was a paradigm shift, right? And I think Zen Server, which, by the way, I think the help system survey shows something like a third of our active customers are using the thing. Zen Server really was easy to install in its own way, but it really doesn't align well with this new paradigm and this new mechanism that we have in RPMs, as you guys know, right? Which is why you're asking, which is why everybody's asking. At the moment, I could say let's. Oh, go ahead.
No, carry on.
No, I was just going to say at the moment, I would say let's not rule out anything, and let's just see what happens, because, like I said, we want to make sure that we do the right thing for the 30-some% of our active customers who are using PHP, as well as new people that we'd like to bring in and get attracted to that language as well. So,
yeah, that was a very good legal response there, Jesse. I'm impressed.
Yeah. I read it from a script, actually.
Yeah. Okay, sorry.
I'm not at liberty to say.
I want to put you on the spot. I understand. So we have a couple more questions. We don't want to keep wasting your time. But something that's interesting. I mean, people can create PTFs, right? As you know, it's easy for business partners to ship their products in a PTF. But what is the process or the workflow that IBM has to deliver a new package? So all the way from picking the next open source solution and actually delivering it to the repository, to the IBM's Yum repository. Do you know what the process looks like? Is there a kind of board that has to pick which ones you're going to ship, or what's the?
Yeah. I mean, it all starts with the picking, right? And to some degree, that's the hard part. To some degree, that's the easy part, and I'll explain why. It's the hard part because we're delivering things at such a more rapid rate right now that every time we deliver one thing, it opens the door for 5 more things that people want. Right. So when we had OPS, that was still okay because we'd ship 2 things a year and we'd get, people wanting 10 things a year. Right. And now that we're shipping hundreds of packages, there's, between the RFPs that we've gotten, which, by the way, is really the recommended way to go about submitting requests for these things. But between the RFPs that we've gotten, between requests that we've gotten from ISVs, business partners, and more private venues, emails that I've gotten, tweets, and so on. I mean, we literally have hundreds of things that the community would like to have right now, right? And some of those the community has stepped up to deliver, which is actually awesome. And that's one of the major reasons we chose to transition away from PTFs.
Could you elaborate on the RFEs really quickly for those that may not know?
Sure. Yeah. So RFEs are relatively new to IBM I and the IBM I community. I think we rolled them out officially. Was it early last year? This is something
it might have been a bit.
I think it might have been 2017. I've been having fun, so time's been flying over here.
But I was going to say, I think it was
2017 when we rolled out RFEs. But anybody, I mean, you don't even have to be technically entitled to IBMI and have an IBMI system. You don't have to be on an advisory council or a special group. Anybody can, in a sense, submit requirements to IBMI development team through this process called the RFE process. And it's a process that other organizations within IBM as a whole have been using for several years. It's been pretty successful, so we rolled it out to IBMI. So if you have anything you'd like to have changed about any of our products, whether it's open source, whether it's ACS, whether it's RPG and the compilers, you can go submit an RFE. And that RFE is publicly viewable. And you can also see if you get votes on that RFE. Other people can go vote it up for you, right? So that's something that we take into account as well when we're trying to gauge what technologies we like to deliver. It's a balance between popularity and business need, right?
Great. So once one is chosen, where do you start getting into building everything?
So once one is chosen, of course, we start with a little bit of feasibility analysis. Look at the dependencies. Are there things that we don't have that it needs to build, right? Which is a common thing. We look at how the AIX builds work, right? We kind of stand on the shoulders of AIX for a lot of this stuff, and we steal their build scripts and spec files and use that as a template sometimes. But yeah, then it's really working through whatever build system the project has, getting stuff built, getting stuff tested. A lot of the things have test suites as part of the project as well. And then, once we have something that builds and it works and it passed tests and the quality seems there, we do have a really cool CI/CD system that we've developed internally where, we can push changes into a GitHub Enterprise repository, and it just kicks off builds and it kicks off deployments, and they go live in a very short period of time.
I don't mean to interrupt, Liam, I know you have something to say, but really quickly, Jesse, is there something special about GitHub Enterprise that's different from just GitHub?
Good question.
Great question. So GitHub Enterprise is still, it's viewable only by other folks in your enterprise, and more specifically, in this case, it's folks that you've granted permission to, right? So there's GitHub, which is public, and there's GitHub Enterprise, which is private. And there's actually a lot of other less important differences there, but I don't want to get into it in too much detail. But it's really our own private GitHub that we can use for IBM only purposes.
And they support you in pretty much anything you would like to do and integrate with that.
Yeah, we've had, we haven't needed to actually engage support, but I've heard the support for us has been very good. But we have integrated as part of our build system. We've integrated it with several Python scripts. We've integrated with Jenkins, and we've integrated with a few other tools as well, just to kind of keep tabs on things. Artifactory is one that we use as part of our CI/CD system as well. So it's really easy because it's Git and it's GitHub. It's a very common, standardized, popular technology, and that's been serving us well.
That's cool. Now, I had just coming back to the development of, putting a new RPM in the repository. Do you find that you actually have to make many changes to the original project's code base to make it run on IBMI specifically? And if so, are those changes that are made, are they upstreamed to the original, source, the original repository?
That varies greatly. There's most projects. I mean, if we were to look at pure numbers, I mean, most of the projects don't need any source code changes for IBMI, which is good, right? And I'm thinking, if I had to guess, probably 70 to 80% just build, right?
Run. They just run, no problem.
Yep, maybe a little tweaks to the build system to tell it, about our file system architecture, how we deliver RPMs. But beyond that, a lot of them just build, right? Because a lot of open source projects are made to be very portable, right? Then there's the handful of projects where we need to make a handful of small changes. There's some projects for which we need to make very substantial changes, and you're absolutely right. Everything that we have changed has been upstreamed or has at least plans to be upstreamed. So Node.js itself, which is our most popular package, all of our changes have been upstreamed so that, you can use the NVM tool, the Node Version Manager tool, and build it yourself because all of our changes are there.
Oh,
right?
Yep.
And
Cool.
all right. Well, so I think we've covered the process from start to finish with RPMs, other than I do want to kind of make it clear to everyone out there. I make this clear in my presentations too, but when you're installing an RPM from IBM's repository, RPM repository, the one that's included with Yum by default, those are shipped and maintained by IBM. They're not just packages that have been copied and pasted. They have been curated first and then shipped and maintained, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's a great point for people to understand and know. When we first started advocating for RPMs and we started talking to, our early testers and our advisory groups and things like that, that was a real point of concern, which is, customers know that if it comes from the entitled software support site, it's official. If it comes from Fix Central,
Right.
it's official, and so on, right? And here we are like, oh yeah, we started with just an FTP based site, and it's just like, oh yeah, here's an FTP site, just go download stuff from there. And even though it's an IBM.com site, people still, rightfully so, had some hesitation there. So that is important to know. Now we have HTTPS. There's a certificate. You can verify some things. And it's really important for people to understand that is official IBM curated content. We're the only people who are publishing stuff out to that IBM.com site.
So that doesn't mean that someone can't make their own repository, right? So for example, if I wanted to, rebuild Ruby and put it into my own repository and let someone use that, that's possible, right?
Absolutely. And again, that was one of the main reasons why we started choosing standard technology for this stuff, is because with PTFs, you mentioned earlier, there are some partners and things who know how to build PTFs, but the average user, even the average ISV or business partner doesn't know how to build a PTF, right?
Yeah.
And so now it's all the build systems, the distribution mechanism. It's all just this very popular standardized technology, and anybody can do it. In fact, Josh is probably ready to go pitch his repo. He has a repository up there that ships. Yep.
I didn't say that.
By the way, our development team uses software from Josh's repository to customize our environments. So,
oh wow, yeah. Well, flattering.
The .files endorsed by Jesse.
All right.
But it is good stuff, right? And now that you mentioned it, as well, the other significant thing that was out there in a third-party repository was, of course, the Mono.NET runtime for IBM I.
Right. Yeah. Very cool stuff. Yeah.
Amazingly cool stuff. And to see such a substantial community contribution and such a large accomplishment from the community as well, I think is a milestone in the history of open source, right? And I think 10 years from now, when open source is in every IBM I shop that's running any type of innovative software on the planet, we're going to look back, and I think that's going to be one of the milestones that ends up on PowerPoint slides and things as well.
That's what I bring up a lot in my slides toward the end, is that, growing up, I always wanted to be part of that explosion that happened when Linux became popular or even started. And, I was too young to be a part of that. But right now is that time on IBM I. So
feels good.
If you want a chance to be a part of history being made, because it's right now, then now is the time. You could start your own repository and start shipping packages and everything, just like what Persil used to be, basically. So like I said, I'm going to repeat it again. Now's the time to join if you want to be a part of that.
Yeah, and it really is now. I mean, I've been using the words open source revolution, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I talk to people, now is the time. A lot of the customers I can't name by name, but I mean, we've been seeing in the past year even an explosion in the amount of people actually deploying things to production with open source, right?
That is so cool.
It's like 3 years ago, open source was almost taboo outside of the PHP realm, right?
Mm-hmm.
A couple years ago, everyone was interested in it. Not a lot of people were doing any more than dabbling, but now we're actually seeing real businesses running real significant parts of their business on these open source stacks. And so it really is right now, it's hitting this inflection point where it's starting to take off. And, we are just getting started, to steal Liam's tagline from the 30-year video, but we are just getting started. This is a revolution. And quite honestly, this is the most important period in IBMi's history in a very long time. It's a very exciting time to be working on IBMi as we're letting this hybrid world grow, which is this hybrid of ILE and open source technologies working together to make real results. It's just incredibly exciting.
Well, I think that incitement is a great way to end the technical part of the podcast. And I think we'll just move on to the more personal. What's going on in your life right now? Do you have a current passion that's taken over or anything, or a hobby?
Well, the short answer is no, as sad as it is. You make me sound whenever I check out at Trader Joe's, they train their employees to ask, what are you doing for the weekend? And it's always, some boring stuff. But, my wife and I, we have a passion for travel. And so, that's usually what we're doing kind of when we can, is we're trying to figure out, where can we go? How do we get there? When are we going places? And so my wife and I are now, we have a trip to the Caribbean coming up next month. We're looking at going to Banff, one of, I think, Canada's first national park. Anyone familiar with that? And we're looking at a couple other continents, Egypt and Asia as well. We're looking to get some trips into, because we just like seeing the wonders of the world and getting inspired by that. Right. So.
Yeah. You and I talk about that a lot. It seems I'd say if I know anyone that's an expert at travel, it's you.
Well, that's
try to get my advice.
Yeah, it's like I say, it's something that we just really like doing, and we like to a lot of the places that we go, we like to just kind of live in the local culture for a while, right? If we can, be another resident of wherever we are. And that's the best way to embrace the culture, right? Whether that means, that might mean you're staying somewhere and you're buying grocery from the local grocery store and, doing that kind of stuff. That's how people live. We like doing that stuff. And there's so much in the world that's just so magical and so empowering to see, that's really what we do. And so that's usually what's going on in my life is, I'm either planning a trip or, I'm at home, like dreading being home because Rochester, Minnesota is not a nice place to be. And I'm somewhere to go. Right. And right now, we're excited that, the snow's finally melting and spring is right around the corner, or at least that's how it feels right now. And, that's just a good feeling as well. I'm not a huge fan of Minnesota winters.
Mm-hmm. Well, maybe I'll see you both in Berlin. Maybe.
Yeah. We'll see. Yeah. So
it's going to be hard.
All right. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Jesse. That was a fantastic talk.
Yep. And again, thank you guys for having me. And I look forward to hearing future episodes of this podcast as well. So you guys have a great day, and to the listeners as well.
Thank you, Jesse. Thank you very much. It's been good.
Well, that was a fun time. I think Jesse did a great job representing the open source community.
Yeah, it was good. And I actually can appreciate that we got probably more out of him than I was expecting. And it was really I got most of the questions answered with more wording than I was expecting, which is really good. So
I like the way you're saying that. Yeah, I agree. We did get some great information and some good candid conversation from Jesse. So I'm happy with all that. Hopefully we'll be able to have him on again later on to just sort of discuss the evolution, maybe a year or so from now, about how open source is going. But yeah.
Well, I think that just kind of is the end of the episode. I mean, I don't think we have much more to say for this one
I'm pretty sure that was it. I mean, we could tease a little bit We still have, in the future, we're planning on RPG and DB2 being topics, obviously. So things are looking great, and we hope everyone will continue to listen and spread the word, because this is going to be a very informative podcast.
Great. Well, thank you for listening. We appreciate your time. It's been good.